Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of September. These are some of my favorite videos to watch and make every month, just to kind of reflect on what I read the past month, to see where I was at and what kind of books I consumed, as well as others. I love hearing people's thoughts on the books that they actually read during the month. This month I was actually able to read 13 books, which is probably the most books I've ever read in any given month. I don't do this full time and I wish I did, let's be clear, but I have a full-time job and I'm also planning a wedding right now, so the fact that I got to that many books was just so exciting. I have a huge TBR and I'm so excited when I get to check a lot of those off. So let's jump into it. I have 13 books and I'm going to talk about them in the order that I read them. So the first book that I finished this month was This Woven Kingdom by Mafi, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I had been listening to this as an audiobook for at least 2 weeks, and then I just finally finished reading it physically. And this book genuinely is so hard for me to explain, but this book follows Eliza, who is a servant but also a lost heir to her people. And Eliza's people are the Jinn, and they have magical powers that have been suppressed by the clay, which are, I think in this world, just basically humans. So Eliza has had to go undercover and basically hide her identity so that she is not being hunted down. She ends up working in one of the royal palaces for the clay. While she does her best to kind of just stay below the radar, trouble just follows her. She has a few things happen that may give her identity away a bit and draws the attention of the crown. Carmine is the prince to the clay's throne. Carmine notices Eliza and is immediately taken by her, kind of sees through the servitude facade and is like, who is she? So from there, we kind of just follow those two as Carmine tries to figure her out and Eliza just tries to keep her head down. Okay, so this book for me was a 3-star rating and I did not really enjoy it that much. I had heard really good positive reviews about this, so it might be for others, but for me it just seemed, for a YA fantasy, I kind of expect a little bit more romance, a little bit less world building and politics, but for the most part it was very heavy on the plot. There wasn't a lot of the romance and nothing really got exciting until the last 100 pages. And for this thick of a book, I mean, that's a very long time. It took me a while to consume it. Since the end of the book did end on a cliffhanger, I think I'll pick up the next one, but I'm not sure if this would be the first kind of YA fantasy book that I would recommend. Next, 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella between The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. And I actually love this novella. I gave this a 4 stars and obviously I'm excited just talking about it. This story follows Lilith, who is a member of society where the entire town has been cursed by the gods and basically everybody is dying of this disease. Lilith has been trying to find a solution. She's a scientist and she's very reclusive. She tries to just make things happen that other people are just praying to the gods for, even though their calls have gone unanswered. And she thinks that a unique way to hopefully get a solution to this problem is to seek out a vampire. Now, everybody else in the town believes that vampires are evil, wicked, and should not be approached. It's a sign of evil, all that good stuff. But Lilith thinks that they are the key to helping their people come back to life and stop dying. So this story follows her as she tries to make that happen, and in exchange for the vampire's blood that she's trying to manipulate to create this solution, she gives him 6 Scorched Roses. And these are magical roses. You find out why at the end, but it is so good. You see this friendship starting to blossom between the two. Really get into Lilith's head about what is going on and how she is actually trying to make things happen and doesn't understand why other people are just sitting around praying when clearly everything has gone unanswered. To me, she was just a really BA main character and she really made things happen, even though it kind of cast her aside in society as maybe not as favorable, but she didn't care. She wanted to save her town, her people, and mainly her sister. I really enjoyed it for a novella. I felt like it was a whole story just packed in, and I know sometimes novellas can have that, but this one felt like it was really its own like short story, not necessarily just vibes, which other novellas tend to be for me. It felt like it was just a really good story told in a very condensed amount of time. So I really enjoyed it, and I am excited to see the characters in The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Next, I read Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Scorched, and I ate this up. I gave it 4.5 stars. I had been putting it off for months because it is just a very long romance, and I really struggle with that concept, but I loved being back in Knockamout. I loved seeing the found family aspects. We get to see Knox and Naomi from the first book, and then we focus more on our characters Nash and Lena. Lena is one of Knox's friends, and she is just kind of a BA, very independent woman. She lives on her own. She doesn't really settle down. She's traveling all the time for her work and is just like more of a fling kind of fun gal. Nash is recovering from something that happened in the first book, and he is in a pretty bad place mentally. And he's been unable to dig himself really out of this depressive episode, basically. So this story kind of follows their two lives as they cross paths. Lena was so much fun. I really enjoyed her perspectives. I love that she was just independent, but you could also see her kind of start to break down and really enjoy Knockamout and enjoy the girls, Naomi and Salome, and then also really kind of give in to Nash and really start to enjoy his presence and think about a life other than just traveling and being on the road all the time. We also get to see Nash, who in the first book kind of put me off a little bit, but in this book I really enjoyed his character. I enjoyed the mental health representation, how he was struggling to overcome something, and then Lena came into his life and kind of helped him out of it and gave him not only just like herself to help, but also practical things that he could do. I cried during the epilogue. It was so sweet. There were so many happy tears, and this like found family element within this world is just so amazing. I am so sad that it's going to be over here soon, but I am really enjoying this and gave it 4.5 stars, and it's on Kindle Unlimited if you all would like to read it that way. And then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I gave this 5 stars. This is the same author as The Dead Romantics, and I read The Dead Romantics last year and absolutely loved it. I was so nervous this wouldn't add up to it for me, but it was still a fantastic story. This story is focused on Clementine, and she has this aunt who is just a bigger-than-life character, always excited to go and do something, and the world just kind of bends to her whim. But Clementine is more like realistic, feet on the ground kind of person, except for the like one time a year when they travel together, and she really gets to go see the world and see the person that she might want to be. Her aunt passes, and Clementine gets to receive her apartment. Her aunt had always warned her that this apartment was magical and would transport you 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. Clementine, naturally, never believed it, but secretly hoped that it was true, and this story focuses on when she wakes up one day and she is 7 years in the past with this male stranger kind of like, what are you doing in my apartment? So this story, and I think that Ashley Poston does this so well. She's really good at writing grief in a way that is understandable and relatable, but also acknowledges that it doesn't have to overtake your life. You can have good moments, you can have bad moments. I believe there's one quote in here that says something along the lines of, it's not necessarily the reality that you wanted, but it's your reality. It's a little sadder, but it's still a great reality. And I mean, I have chills just talking about it. It is just, I think, really, really well done in that way. Since you have the magical element of the apartment taking Clementine 7 years in the past, she meets her love interest at that time in his life. And so you get to watch that relationship build, which I think is essential to the story, because otherwise, had we not had that context, I think the story might have felt a little bit too insta-lovey. But also, when she's meeting this person in the past, I mean, when I heard this description, I was so curious how that like whole concept worked, and I won't get too much into it. But it does make sense, and it was done really well, so I really enjoyed it. And also the friendship aspects of it and the family aspects of it. I just think that she does relationships, not necessarily just romantic, but also platonic, really well. And yeah, I would definitely recommend picking this book up. Next, I went to the beach for 7 days, and I tried to read 7 books in 7 days. So the first book that I read on that trip was Wicked Beauty by Katie Robert. I listened to this as an audiobook because when I'm traveling, I get motion sick, so I have to listen to audiobooks. I think I gave this book 3 or 3.5 stars. It was a fun read, but I don't think anything will ever top Neon Gods for me. So I need to stop comparing everything to Neon Gods, but it was just so good. So this story focuses on 3 characters who are all competing for the title of Aries that has just recently been vacated. First, we have Helen, who has been in the Olympian circle for a while and is really tired of being a pawn in everybody else's game and really wants to be somebody making moves and just not being able to be touched. What Helen doesn't know is that she is about to be assigned to be the wife of the victor who becomes Aries. Regardless of that, she goes into this competition and is just ready to prove herself. 2 other competitors we have are Achilles and Patroclus, but Patroclus is really there just to support Achilles in his endeavors to become Aries. Patroclus and Helen have a little bit of a history together, and there's immediate attraction there where Achilles is a very hot-headed and jealous, but believes that Helen is just a spoiled Olympian brat, basically. So it is very testy between the 3 of them for a while, but then ends up kind of being a wide choose. So definitely good spice. This is Katie Robert we're talking about, so like it's good spice. Second, the relationship honestly was super fun to me. It was a great time. I felt like there was enough plot to justify the amount of spice. It just added to it. It was just good. The competition element of this was super fun because we got to see them go through the trials to becoming Aries. And I really loved Helen's determination. She was not putting up with anybody's excuses for why she shouldn't be doing this. She wasn't dropping out. She was holding strong, and I love to see that because she had been belittled and degraded, and she said, I'm gonna do this for myself. It was a really fun read. I really love this Dark Olympus series. I've ordered the next book, so I think that I am going to be consuming that here soon. But really am enjoying these stories. So if you haven't started the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert and you like spice in a modern Greek retelling, these are the books for you. The next book that I read was The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose, and I gave this 4.5 stars. This book follows a married couple. Sarah is a successful defense attorney lawyer, and she's always kind of just a workaholic trying to make a name for herself as she's been named partner. Loves her work, but Adam is a struggling writer, and he kind of resents that Sarah is always on the go and a little bit more successful than he is. So Adam had asked for this kind of vacation home a little bit further out and for it to be his writing place, but what he ended up actually doing at this writing place was having an affair with one of the women in the town. This woman was found murdered in Adam and Sarah's bed, and Adam becomes the prime suspect in her murder. Sarah is trying to tamp these emotions down and provide him the best defense attorney that she can. And so we get to see the book as they go to trial and try to figure out who actually killed this mistress. Okay, so I have been told a lot that this book is so good, and now I know that it is so good. It had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. You get the dual POV, so you get Sarah's POV and then also Adam's POV, so you know that Adam didn't do it, but you can see Sarah trying to figure out if he had it in him to do it, really. I loved the concept that Sarah was trying to put her personal feelings to the side to make sure that she could give the best representation of her husband, but it was also great to see her cracks kind of come in because I can't imagine the personal toll that would take on somebody. It was so interesting. I really enjoyed it, and this was one of those kind of like whodunit, but I normally like to see a little bit of like the trail that leads you up to that point. I did not see the ending coming, not even a little bit, and I loved every second of it. I can't compare it to anything because I think it would give it away. But it was just one of those amazing, amazing moments that I was like, this is so exciting. I loved it and am so excited that I read it and would definitely recommend picking it up. Next, I read King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair, and I gave this 2 stars. This story follows Izzy, who is a princess in one of the human territories. Adrian is basically a vampire king who has been conquering the human lands for a while and has been leaving death and destruction in his path. Izzy's father is the king and was going to try to make a peace treaty with Adrian before he just wrecked his entire city. But then Adrian surprises everybody by asking for Izzy's hand in marriage, and he would leave them alone. To protect the city, Izzy decides to go ahead and marry this man even though she hates vampires, can't stand basically what she's been taught about them. And the story follows her as she tries to figure out the vampire world that she has come into. I should have known what to expect because 1, the plot sounds amazing. The plot hypothetically could have been amazing, but for me, there was too much spice in this. There was too much spice for the plot to really do anything with it. There were like jealousy aspects that I didn't really like, and I don't know, just overall it really fell flat for me because I understand like a hate passion, but it was just too much. It was too much and I did not enjoy it. I won't be reading the next book. I don't really care for it that much. That is just my personal opinion. I think that others have enjoyed this book, but for me, when I want a romantasy, I need it to be a little bit more of a slow burn or a build, or maybe even like a rivals to, like this should have been rivals to lovers. Like it shouldn't have been what it was. So yeah, personally, I don't recommend this one. If you're looking for just a lot of spice and a little bit of plot, maybe. But overall still, I don't think that this was one of my favorite reads. The next book that I picked up to hopefully get me out of a tough hangover from the romantasy that fell flat, I picked up a YA romance, which was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert, and I gave this 4 stars. This story follows our main characters, Bradley and Celine, and they were besties growing up, but then something happens and they can't stand each other after that. They're next door neighbors, and one day when Celine wants to go to this info session on a program that she wants to use to get into the best law school, the best college, Bradley offers to drive her and ends up sitting in with her. That's how they both come to be participants in this program, and you get to see them go through survival courses and also come to a truce so that they can get through this program without the constant bickering. I really enjoyed this. The survival setting was super fun. I liked their trials together and how you could see both of their points of views. Yeah, so at some parts you get to see Bradley and what he's thinking, and he has, I think, some form of OCD, and he was just such a good mental health representation, and he has things that genuinely bother him and he can't help that it bothers him, and you can see him actively trying to talk himself down and using some of the things that he's learned over his time dealing with this. And I love that aspect of it. Celine is super fun because she is really into conspiracy theory. She has this whole TikTok dedicated to them. And then she also has some abandonment issues from her father and wants to be this really amazing lawyer just to prove that they did okay without him. So we get a lot of, I feel like, really tougher subjects, but also are handled in that YA way that make them very consumable and relatable, and you don't feel too bad about it. Like, it's still a lighthearted read. It's still very short. I think it's under 300 pages, and it makes you feel good at the end. It was really, really sweet. I definitely recommend picking this one up. The next book that I picked up was The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I gave this 3 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Inheritance Games series, and it follows Avery and the Hawthorne brothers as she comes into her final kind of months before she fully takes over the Hawthorne fortune. Since this is the 3rd in a book, I can't really say too much about the plot because it might ruin something from the previous books, but there are more riddles, more adventures that they're going on. It's kind of interesting. I just really did not, I think, need this book. It was necessary so that we could tie out and see Avery get to a place where she had the fortune. Everything else that happened I feel like was pretty unnecessary. I think that we could have ended with the Hawthorne Legacy, I believe, the 2nd book. I don't think that this was really the series for me. I think that the 1st and 2nd book were great. They were entertaining enough, but just not as great as I was hoping for. But that's okay. I think that if everybody else really enjoys the series, I would definitely read the 1st book to see if you enjoy it. But I just don't think that this series was like the perfect one for me. Next, I read A Flicker in the Dark by Stacy Willingham, and I gave this 3 stars as well. This follows our main character, Chloe, who when she was a little girl had something happen in her town where 6 little girls disappeared, and her dad ended up being the one arrested for their disappearance. Fast forward, she is now a therapist herself, and some very similar disappearances have started happening. And she feels the need to get involved since it was her father who had been arrested for the crimes originally. She wants to understand who is doing this now. I listened to this as an audiobook on our flight back home, and I think that's why I probably wasn't that into it. I think overall I really enjoyed the twist in this. I did not see the ending coming. I really enjoyed it. Well, overall I really enjoyed it. I promise I did, but then there were just a few things that threw me off. Specifically, Chloe was just kind of hard to deal with personally. She did really try to insert herself into this investigation, which I get based on her past, but also I felt like she was kind of haphazard in doing it and just kind of threw caution to the wind. And with the crimes that were happening, you would think that she would be a little bit more cautious. There's this one part where she rushes into a scene and is like, I'm gonna call the cops, but then realizes that she left her phone in the car. I can't stand that, and that's fine. That's fine, but it really throws me for a loop. So I'm definitely gonna read her next book. I think that she does a really good story, and I think I'm going to read it physically next time and try to focus on it a little bit more to see if I really enjoy this author's writing or not. Next, I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. This story follows our main character, Mika Moon, who is a witch, but her entire life she's been told basically that witches can't congregate together for too long because there will be too much power and it's dangerous to them as a whole. In order to combat some of the loneliness she feels and not being able to be her true self, she creates this TikTok account where she's able to kind of be a cozy, comfy witch, like pretending and not really showing all of her magical abilities. But somebody does recognize that she is a witch, and that happens to be one of the caretakers at Nowhere House. Nowhere House currently has 3 young witches, and Mika is recruited to come and teach them their powers. Mika is obviously very hesitant about this because the rules are in place, but she's just too curious not to go see. So this story follows her as she kind of finds this family at Nowhere House and opens herself up to them. This writing is very funny. I really enjoyed the way the voice in the story was super great. I really enjoyed the found family aspect and also the romance that happened in here, and Mika also being able to open up and address some of her insecurities at never being enough or what others need her to be. It was just so sweet, and the magic was really fun. Her teaching the younger witches how to control it and what it looks like. She's also what I believe is called like a natural witch, where she's just really good at potion making, and she puts her potions into her teas to give people a little bit of something extra. This was the perfect read to kick off my spooky reads for the year, and I definitely recommend everybody picking this one up. Next, I finished reading Snowed In for Christmas by Jacqueline Snow, and I gave this 4 stars. This was a finished copy that got sent to me early. It actually comes out on October 3rd. I got this as a Neck Alley book where I could review it, but then I actually got a physical copy, so I was even more excited about it because the cover is just so cute. This story follows our main character, Becca, who is a sorority mom for her house, and she went on this really amazing date with Harrison 2 years ago. He said that he would call and just ghosted her. She's getting all the girls out for Christmas break, and this huge winter storm is about to roll in, so she tries to hunker down and get safe. Unfortunately, the power in the sorority house goes off. Luckily, Harrison comes over and tries to help her out and ultimately recruits her back to his house so they can kind of just hunker down and keep each other alive, basically. Becca's very uncomfortable about this because Harrison is obviously ghosted her 2 years ago and also still very much has a crush on it. This is a dual POV, so we get to see kind of why Harrison did that 2 years ago and also how he's feeling about Becca now. I really enjoy this book because 1, Becca is super quirky and unapologetically herself. I love that so much. 2, both of the main characters support college students. Harrison's the football coach and Becca's a sorority mom. You love to see people who care about the next generation. I love that. And then 3, this story was set at Christmas time, but Christmas time wasn't the main plot point. The main plot point was staying alive during this insane winter storm, and that was way more fun for me. The only thing that bothered me was the kind of insta-loviness at the ending, but other than that, it was 4 stars, such a fun read, and would definitely recommend y'all pick it up for this winter. And finally, the last book that I read this month was The Cloysters by Katie Hayes, and I gave this 2 stars. I listened to this as an audiobook, and this basically follows Anne, who moves to New York City to be a summer intern at the Met. The Met has actually cut her position, and she ends up being recruited to another museum called the Cloysters. At the Cloisters, she meets this little group of people who are very enchanting, but also seem to be a little dangerous. and also hyper-fixated on tarot cards and if they were just a pastime or if they could actually tell the future. So the story kind of progresses as she makes her way through the summer at the cloisters. I thought originally that this book was going to be similar to The Cartographers, where it's set in this academic setting, but there's a bigger plot going on outside of it, and I guess that is still true, but it just wasn't one that captured me very well. I felt like it was very slow moving. The way they talk sometimes was just very, if you're not a medieval art expert, you're not going to pick it up. Yeah, it just really did not do it for me, unfortunately. I love the cover of this book so much, but the story ultimately fell flat. And that's all I really have to say about it. Wow, that is a lot. So those are the 13 books that I ended up reading in the month of September. I had a super wide range, which was super fun because some months it doesn't look like that, but I felt like I got a little bit of every genre in here. And I am going to put them down before they fall over. A couple of things. First, let me know if you've read any of these books. I love to talk about them. If you have any thoughts on them, let me know. 2, what was your favorite book that you picked up in September? I am so excited now to get into the spooky reads of October. If you read any really good ones in September, let me know. And 3, thanks for being here. I love seeing this little community grow. I think it's a great time. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and let's have another great reading month in October. Bye.